Okay, so we all good there? You're 15, 20 minutes late. That's fine, no big deal. But next day, in addition to your homework, I want to see the notes that you missed. Okay, because we're not doing a good job of that. Right, so we all good on that? Expectations, the video will be up so you can just watch and take the notes that you missed from being late. All right, ready to roll? Need calculators out today if you have one. Definitely need one out. Today, actually, no geometry. We got to review an algebra topic, probably from last year that you did, that you need to be successful in this unit. And that is how to solve a proportion. All right, how to solve a proportion. Well, first of all, what is a proportion? Everyone knows that we've seen these before. That's a fraction, right? 2/5, that's a fraction. Let's see, when I have another fraction and I set the two together, that's called a proportion. Okay, that's called a proportion when I set two fractions equal to each other. But for ours, we're going to have a variable in one of them. All right, we're going to have a variable in one of the fractions. I'm going to ask you guys to solve for that variable. So I'm hoping you guys have been exposed to this. To solve this proportion, you cross multiply. Does that term sound familiar? Cross multiply. Because I'm only going to go over one with you, and I'm going to do a lot better job of start calling on people too. So take a look at number one. We got 2/5 equals n over 35. I cross multiply. Let me do this slow now. So I go 5 times n gives me 5n equal to, now you cross multiply on the other side, 2 times 35, 70. And now you take over from there. Divide both sides by 5. N's going to equal, what do we got there? 1, 2, 14. So I'm going to cross multiply. The only thing, the problem today is going to be, it's not going to be as easy as that to get 5n equals 70 and go from there. We're going to have to do a couple other things. All right, go to 2 now. Same thing. I got two fractions equal to each other, so I want to cross multiply. So go ahead, cross multiply and tell me what you get on the left and the right-hand side. And just be prepared for it to be called on a lot more. Okay, 1, start us off, Adam. What do you got on the left and right side?
3x equals 2x plus 2.
Yep, and if anybody had them switched, that's fine. They're the same. 2x plus 2 equals 3x. All right, now you got to solve for x. Okay, this isn't anything new, hopefully. Move the x's over. When you're ready, let me know. X equals 4.
X equals
2, done. All right, let me stop there. Are we good? Because now it's going to come into a little bit more Algebra 1 stuff to solve. All right, look at number 3. That doesn't look like a proportion, does it? Doesn't look like a fraction equal to a fraction. You know, I got a fraction on the right side, but the left side, I don't have a fraction. It's a fraction, though. You just never see it. It's really over 1. So if you want to make it into a proportion, we can do that. All right, you ready? Cross multiply. We'll do the easier one first. 13 times 1. We got 13. Now here we go. Let's go back to Algebra 1 last year. Probably even middle school you did this. X plus 6 times x minus 6. I'm actually going to write that out. X plus 6, x minus 6. Double distribute. Maybe you called it FOIL back in the day. All right, let's review this. I won't call in anybody here. Let's review it. So I'm going to take the x here, distribute it. X times x. Don't tell me x squared or 2x. X squared. X times negative 6. Negative 6x. Now you distribute the positive 6. 6x. And then 6 times negative 6. Negative 36. Double distribute. All right, clean it up for me now. There's some like terms you can combine over there. Clean it up. What do you notice? Negative 6x and 6x cancel, right? They're gone. See you later. So I'm just left with x squared minus. All right, what's your next move? I need x by itself. Abbott, suggestion.
Add 36.
Okay, everyone go ahead. Add 36 over. Yep, we're going to try to get x alone, so let's add 36 over. X squared equals 49. All right. How do I get the x squared by, or the x by itself? It's squared now. Anna, go ahead with thoughts.
Square root of both sides.
Anytime, good. Anytime you want to take the squared away, you take the square root of both sides. So a lot of us are just going to write down x equals 7. But I can only give you half credit for that. When you take the square root, anybody remember from last year, not only are you left with the positive version, we're also left with the negative version as well. Got to be disciplined in remembering that. Square root of 49 is 7, but it's also negative 7. So I'm expecting two answers here. And are you guys familiar with, if I just write plus or minus 7? That means plus 7 in my, or you can write out negative 7 comma positive 7. Either one's fine. But when you take the square root of a number, you're left with both versions. Both versions. Questions? Okay, it's going to get a little tougher now. Woo! Now you're going to have to factor these at the end. Okay, we're going to have to factor. So go ahead, cross multiply. You're going to have x times x minus 2 on one side. And you're going to have 5 times x plus 6 on the other side. I'll give you guys a second. Go ahead and distribute. Because all I have on the board is the cross multiply. Now you got to distribute each, the x and the 5. All right, let me know when you just distribute on both sides. We don't have to go another step yet. 6. What do we get when you distribute on both sides?
X squared minus 2x
Good job on the left and on the right, Nate. 5x plus 30. We're good. Any issues there? All right, now we see the following. I see x squared with an x. If at any time I have a squared and just an x, it's time to factor. You cannot factor unless one side's equal to 0. So we got to move some stuff over. How do I get the 5x and how do I get the 30 over? 11. How do I get the 5x over? How do I get the 30 over? Everybody subtract the right side over. Subtract 5x, subtract 30. Got to get it equal to 0 before you decide to factor. Minus 5x minus 30. All right, so you got the right side equal to 0. What do you have on the left side now? 7 on the right side. I got the x squared, and then what?
Minus 7x.
Minus.
Minus 3.
There you go. Great job. Minus 30. Now it's time to factor. All right, and unfortunately, everyone, I don't have time to go over all the different ways and slow it down and do all these problems. We factor a couple times already this year. This is going to be two numbers that multiply to negative 30, but at the same time add to negative 7. And this is on you now. You got to find those numbers. Multiply to negative 30, but add to negative 7. Multiply to negative 30, but give you negative 7 when I add them. Got them yet? Here? 10. Any idea? I always start with the numbers that multiply. So I'm thinking about numbers that multiply to 30 first. Who has 10?
I do.
Okay, what numbers are you thinking about here, Iris?
Well, I originally thought 15, but that doesn't.
Okay, 15 and 2, right? Won't give me 7, so let's keep going. Other numbers that'll give you 30. 15 and 2 are out. There's more combos. You started with, go ahead.
10 and -3.
Okay, so I got 10 and 3. Now I need to add to -7. So what do I put in front of the 10 and what do I put in front of the 3 to make them add to -7?
Oh, -10 and positive.
Everyone good? Okay, that's the factoring part. You haven't even told me what x is equal to yet. Now you take it out of the parenthesis and you say, all right, x minus 10 equals 0. And I don't need to see this step. If you guys know, it's just the opposite. And I take x plus 3 out of the parenthesis and set it equal to 0. Now you tell me what x equals. Again, I don't need to see that step. You can just say x equals this, x equals this. But if you need that step, write it down. So you should get 2 answers here for this proportion. 2. 10. X equals 10, positive 10. And x equals -3. Both I need in there. Questions? Okay, go ahead. Number 2. I'm going to walk around and watch you do this. You're going to have to double distribute one side. You're going to have to double distribute one side. Then get one side equal to 0. Okay, when you double distribute, are you getting x squared plus 4x plus 3? Look good? Okay, now you want to get one side equal to 0, but make a good decision here. You see how your x squared is already positive? Leave it positive. Don't make it negative because I'm not too sure how to factor that when it's negative. All right, so if your x squared is positive, keep it positive. So I would prefer you move the 3x and the 15 over. Subtract it over to the other side. So what I need from somebody is, what do you get when you set it equal to 0? What do you get? 0 equals x squared, and then what else you got for me? 3. What else you got for me? X squared.
Plus x minus 12.
Okay. So we ready? 2 numbers that multiply to -12, but add to +1. Numbers that multiply to -12, but add to +1. So start getting in your mind again. Numbers that multiply to 12 that are 1 apart. What do you got for me? Numbers that multiply to 12, 3 apart. 3, again.
4 and 3.
4 and 3. What signs you got for me?
I got x plus 4 and x minus 3.
There you go. And then if you need to, go ahead, take them out of the parentheses, set them equal to 0, and let me know in a second what your x values are equal to. $13, x equals
3 and -4.
Got it. All good? Let me see you do 3 all through, all the way to the end. And then we are not going to do number 4, so don't go on to number 4, please. Just stick with number 3, all the way to the end. Remember, before you factor, you want your x squared to be positive. So we'll try to factor something where the x squared is negative. That's the only type of factoring I'm going to have you be responsible for. It's right there. Multiply to the last term, add to the middle term. And that is it, guys. That's all the factoring I'm going to have you be responsible for. And that's why we're not doing number 4. That's it. Last thing we got to talk about, what happens when you can't factor it, but I still want an answer for x. All right, you multiply, you cross multiply, you double distribute, you move everything over, get it equal to 0, but you just can't factor it. But I'm still looking for an answer. That's the second part of today. Before I show you what we need to do, we need to do a little review of breaking down the radical, which I think we've done a couple of those this year. So before you break down a radical, you need to know your perfect squares, because we need to find the biggest perfect square that goes into my radical. So let's list off some of the perfect squares right now. I'd like to start at 4. You guys take it from there. I don't memorize these, by the way. You know how I got 4? 2 squared. Guess how I'm going to get the next one? 3 squared. 9. 16. I'm going to show off here. Definitely need some more. 25. 36. Go a couple more. 49. 64. We'll stop there. Again, do you see what I mean? I'm not memorizing these. Went too high. 2 squared, 3 squared, 4 squared, so on. You don't need to memorize them. All right, so breaking down a radical. Let's go. Square root of 72. You break it up into 2 separate radicals. Underneath the first one is one of those perfect squares that goes into 72. but you have to pick the biggest one that goes in without a remainder. So no decimal when you type it into your calculator, just a whole number. So which one's the biggest one up there? Not the first one you come across, because I know 9 works, but there's a bigger one. The biggest one you can find that goes into 72 without any remainder, no decimal. All right, which one's the biggest one up here? 6? 36. So underneath the first radical, you put the biggest perfect square that goes in without a remainder. Underneath the second one, you pick what you need to multiply 36 by. So 36 and what? Give me 72. 1. Yeah, it's 36 times 2. So a 2 goes underneath the second one. Last step. What is the square root of 36? 6. So I write 6. And the radical 2 goes in your answer. There it is. 6 radical 2 is my simplified one. All right, try it out on 32 now. Biggest perfect square, not the first one you come across. Here we go. 7, biggest perfect square that you found.
16.
16 and
2.
2. Final answer there, Kara.
4 radical 2.
4 radical 2. Good. Everyone all right breaking it down? All right, last thing here. Showing you 3 and 4. You cannot divide those. This isn't 48. This is the square root of 48, which is a totally different number. You cannot divide them. You break it down, then divide it. So the first thing I need your help with is break down 48. You cannot divide. That's the square root of 48, not the number 48. So break down 48 first, and then we'll talk. So find one of the biggest ones, not the first one you come across, the biggest one that goes in the 48. Okay, help me out. Biggest one that went in the 48. 9. 16 times 3. Good. Over 2. What did it break down into all the way there, Ellen? What do you have?
4.
Okay, so 4 radical 3 over 2. Everyone's good? Now you do the division you can. All right, now you can divide 4 over 2. So my final simplified answer would be 2 radical 3. Everyone see where I'm getting the 2 from here? 4 divided by 2. Okay, simplify first, divide last. Simplify first, divide last. Try it out on 4. Again, do not divide 150 and 5. That's not 150. It's the square root of 150. So break down 150 and then divide by 5 if you can. If you can at the end. All right, first thing I want to know, When you broke down 150, what'd you end up with? 6, 25 and 6. So we should have had 5 radical 6, everyone. When you broke down 150 over 5. 5 divided by 5, they cancel each other out. So this really just broke down to radical 6. And there's a reason why we're doing this, because you're going to need it for the next part. Any issues there? How we got to radical 6? We sure? All right, going back to my last question a couple minutes ago. What happens when you can't factor? You're looking for two numbers, and you just don't find them that multiply to this and add to this. Your buddy, the quadratic. Did we do quadratic formula last year? I should ask that. Okay. Good news. I'll always give you this. You don't need to memorize this in this class. I will give you this on the test next week. All right. So I will give you this, but you do need to know how to use it. So use this quadratic formula to find the roots. Let's stop right here. We got a new vocabulary term there. Roots. Guys, that's the same as the solutions. All right. Roots, solutions, same meaning. Find x. All right. Find x. Okay. Find x. In the quadratic formula, you got A, B, and you got C. Let's make sure we know where to find those. First thing, make sure it's equal to 0. That doesn't change. Whether you can factor or not, darn thing's got to be equal to 0. Now you have an A, a B, and a C. A value located in front of x squared. There's nothing there, but we know there's what? We're not putting a 0 there in for A. We're putting 1. So we put a 1 in for A. B is what's in front of just the x term. And that is a 2. And the C term is the last constant, which is the one without a variable, negative 1. All right, I'm going to go slow through this. Ready? So let's use the quadratic formula. X equals negative B. So B value is 2. What are we going to plug in? Negative 2. Everyone see where that comes from? Plus or minus, and then this is where I get really nervous. It's underneath the radical. Please watch how I do this, and I would like you guys to do the same exact thing. Anytime you plug in, I'd like it in parentheses. So what are we plugging in for B? 2. So I'd like that in parentheses, 2 squared. And when you touch your calculator in a couple of seconds, I'd also like the calculator to have parentheses there too. Minus 4. I'm not plugging in there. That's just 4. That's part of the formula. A, put it in parentheses, 1. Times C, put it in parentheses, negative 1. I also want it in parentheses when you plug it in your calculator in a second. All right? Use the parentheses. Over 2 times A, 1. Everyone all right? So underneath the radical, at least have the parentheses. Now go ahead, find out what that number is underneath the radical. And again, you use parentheses too. If you see parentheses on your paper, what do I have? Go ahead, Iris. Yep, go ahead. There should be some in the top filing cabinet. Let's just worry about right now, what do I get underneath the radical? That's the only thing you should be finding right now. What's underneath the radical? And let me know when you're ready here. Anna, what number did you get underneath the radical? I just want I don't want radical there. I just want the number under the radical. That's it. That's it. Just want the number under. Don't take the square root of the number. We're not there yet. I just want the square root of whatever number's underneath there. 8. Everyone getting 8 underneath the radical. Over 2 times 1, we get 2 in the denominator. Hey, everyone, I don't want you typing this in the only thing you should be using your calculator for now is to get this number underneath the radical. That's it. I don't want you to do -2 plus radical 8, or I don't want you to use your calculator for that because we're going to keep this in radical form. Radical 8, break it down. That's why we just spent 5-6 minutes practicing this. Break radical 8 down, just like we did in the last couple problems. -2 plus or minus. If you need to do it off to the side, do it off to the side, but I need you to break radical 8 down for me so I can move on in the problem. I want to leave most of these answers in simplest radical form. So just break down the square root of 8 off to the side, wherever you want to do it. All right, what's radical 8 break down into? 7?
4, radical 4, radical 2.
Good, and then the final answer should be here. Radical 8 is the same as?
2, radical 2.
Okay, 2 radical 2. Everyone's all right? That's what gets replaced here. Replace the radical 8 now with the simplified version. 2 radical 2. Almost done. Any issues? Okay, now what we're going to do, we're going to take the 2 in the denominator and put it over each of these in the numerator. So we're going to basically break this up into 2 fractions right now. Break it up into 2. -2 over 2. See where I got that? -2 over 2 plus or minus 2 radical 2 over 2 again. I just broke it up into 2 fractions. Now you guys reduce them. Now reduce each of them if you can. Six, help me out. -2 over 2 plus or minus. What cancels out here?
2.
The 2's, so it's just left with what, Nate? There's my final answer. -1 plus or minus radical 2. Whew. Oh, and we know 1 doesn't make you great. Let's roll right into the next one. First of all, before we do any quadratic formula, what's got to happen with this? 10? Iris, what's got to happen to this one before I do anything?
Make it equal to 0.
Yeah, I don't care what we're doing. Factoring or quadratic formula. 3x squared minus 5x, and put it in the correct order too, so we know where A, B, and C is. Before I move on, why am I probably going to prefer quadratic formula here? I don't want to try to factor this because see how there's a number out in front? We haven't discussed or reviewed how to factor something like that. We've only factored something with a 1 out in front. All right, so that's why I automatically prefer you guys go to quadratic formula. I don't know how to factor this. All right, A, B, and C. Before I plug it in, help me out. What's my A, B, and C value? Go through all 3 of them for me. 4. A is?
A would be
That's the number in front of x squared, remember.
3.
3. What's my B value?
-5.
And my C?
-1.
All right, let's plug it into quadratic formula. X equals, somebody's going to help me plug it all in, 8 negative B. So what am I going to show?
So it's 5.
Yep, here we go. 5 plus or minus. Now I want everything in parentheses here. Go ahead.
-5
Yep.
squared.
Hey, make sure it's in parentheses. Minus 4. And then what? A? 3.
And times -1.
Good. See how they're all in parentheses. And darn it, put the parentheses in your calculator. Not done yet, Sophia. 2 over 2 times?
Times 3.
A, right? 2A, so 3. All right, let's keep trucking. Now we use the calculator to find the number under the radical only. What is the number underneath the radical going to be here? Use your parentheses in the calculator. When you're ready, what number did you get underneath the radical? 1, Anna, back to you.
37.
30, everyone getting 37? Over 2 times 3, getting 6 here. All right, I did this on purpose for you. Breaking down 37. Anybody find a perfect square that goes into 37? Me neither. You can't break down 37. There is no perfect square that goes into 37, so don't force it, which means, guess what? We're done. If you cannot break down the radical, that's it. Don't try anything fancy on me. All right, you can't break down. There is no perfect square that goes into 37 without a remainder. So if that's the case, we don't have to do as much work as we did in the previous problem. That's all we have to do. There's my final answer. All right, perfect timing here. Let's see if we can get through on your own. Number 3. So cross multiply, get it equal to 0 first. And let me stop you here real quick. I still want you to think about factoring it. Don't forget about factoring. There's a 1 out in front. Think about factoring. The problem, are there numbers that multiply to 2 and add to 5? No. You're not going to find any numbers that multiply to 2 and add to 5. So that's why you're forced to go to quadratic formula. All right, I don't want you to forget about factoring though. But you cannot factor this, so you are forced to go to quadratic formula. Use the parentheses. Getting 17 underneath the radical, and probably you're finding out you can't break down 17. So we got lucky again. That's not going to happen a lot tonight, but if it does, leave it. Last thing, homework answers on Google Classroom. All they are answers. You want full credit tomorrow? You show work too. Please just don't jot down the answers, all right? Great to see everybody again.